courtesy of the Kuhner Report, 8:06 here on the great WRKO, and now on 93.7 HD2, 617-266-6868. If you want to be part of the show, you can also text us 680-680. Later this hour, stunning new Inspector General's report about how systemic and deep the corruption is at Veterans Affairs. Also, a couple of new explosive scandals in Texas and in California. Believe me, this Veterans Affairs scandal is getting bigger and more dangerous by the day. But before I get to that, this is a very interesting story that it was on Politico, and then it's sort of gone everywhere. Politico, as you know, is a center-left news website. I read it occasionally just to see what the liberals are saying. But anyway, on this one, even a stop clock is right twice a day. On this one, they're dead on. The question that many social critics and observers, not just in America, but frankly across Europe, and I'm talking now the British press, the Financial Times, the German media, the French media, even the Russian media, is what happened to the American media. Over the last 5.5 years, you have seen the death of the American press. And we had a caller just last hour at the end, Neil, saying he brought his son to the Boston Public Library, and all his son could read was the New York Times and the Boston Globe. Now, I gotta be honest with you. 40, 50, 60 years ago, yes, the New York Times in particular had a liberal slant. But you could actually still get credible information, factual information from their reporting about what's happening around the world. What's now happened over the last 5.5 years, which is why the media is not covering Benghazi, and why they're not covering the IRS scandal, and why they're not covering Fast and Furious, and why they're not covering the NSA, and why they're not covering spying on journalists, and why, frankly, they're not covering the VA scandal the way they should, is because the media in this country has gone from liberal bias to outright democratic activism. They have gone from bias to becoming activists. And what the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Boston Globe and CNN, the Clinton News Network, they have become essentially America's Pravda and Izvestia. They are propaganda arms for the regime. It doesn't matter if it's the dear leader or Madam Hillary, or in the case of the Boston Globe, Mini-Me. And if it's Martha Coakley in 2014, if she wins, it'll be for Martha Coakley. Whoever the Democrat is in power, whoever the liberal is in power, that's who they back, and they will cover things up, twist and manipulate the facts to prop up the regime. In other words, they're no longer in the truth-telling business, in the information-gathering business, wherever the consequences lead. They are in the propaganda business. They are in the manipulation and deception business, the persuasion business, the persuading business. And what is incredible is there is a profile piece on a man that I watch occasionally. He's got a certain flair about him. I don't agree with him. Actually, I strongly disagree with him on the issue of immigration. He is very pro-amnesty. But his name is Jorge Ramos. Now, many of you may say, Jeff. Who is Jorge Ramos? He is the host of Univision. He's their top news anchor. Apparently, he is one of the most respected Latinos in the United States of America. It's based in Miami. And he has a Spanish language news broadcast that is followed almost religiously by millions of Hispanics across the country. So he does the Univision broadcast in Spanish, although now there's an English version. Now, why do I talk about Jorge Ramos? Because he recently did an interview with Politico. Now, he's been criticized by some himself for being an activist journalist. I get that. And in particular, his hobby horse has been amnesty. And he's been pounding Obama on amnesty. He's been pounding John Boehner on amnesty. He drives that issue over and over again. But the fact of the matter is, I respect Jorge Ramos. I disagree with Jorge Ramos, but I respect him. Why? Because unlike the other sycophants at the New York Times and the Boston Globe and the Washington Post and CNN and NPR, and I could go down the list, who lick the boots of power, who brown nose those in positions of authority, he actually dares to challenge him. And frankly, to his credit, it's not just on amnesty. The botched rollout of Obamacare, it was Jorge Ramos, a Latino who speaks Spanish on Univision, who asked Obama the obvious questions that the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC would not and refused to ask. And basically, his theme, the principle that animates his journalism, is a very simple one. It's something that we've lost in America today because we're so used and accustomed to politicians lying. We call it spin. Spin is not spin, it's lying. A promise is a promise is a promise. It's an old world virtue that we in America used to adhere to really up until recently. That when a man or a woman makes a promise, their honor, their character, who they are, should stand behind that promise. And that a broken promise is a disgrace, is a betrayal. Especially if you're a politician, a public person serving the people. Because you've broken the sacred trust, your sacred word to your constituents and to the voters. And that's why in the past, for example, even as recently as the late 1980s, early 1990s, when George H.W. Bush said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," and then he broke his promise, he broke his pledge, the American people held him accountable and they kicked him out of office. But that was 25 years ago, my friends. We now live in a different age, where lies dominate, where we're fed lies by the regime and their sycophants in the media, the government media complex, every day. And the only thing Jorge Ramos does when he interviews, whether it be Obama or John Boehner or whoever, all he says over and over again, "But Mr. President, a lie is a lie is a lie. A promise is a promise is a promise. You said nobody would lose their health insurance. They did. You said they wouldn't lose their premiums. Their premiums would not go up. They did. Mr. President, you lied." Let me read to you what Jorge Ramos said about reporters in Washington and New York, the establishment reporters at the New York Times, at the Washington Post, at the Boston Globe, at the Associated Press. It is a damning indictment. A Spanish-speaking Latino anchor on Univision, I want you to think about this, has more honor, decency, and integrity than the supposed seasoned professionals at the New York Times or the Washington Post. I want you to listen. This is not Jeff Kuhner. I could be saying this because I saw this in Washington the 12 years I was there. Here is Jorge Ramos. I want you to listen to this very carefully. Quote, "You turn on the TV and you see very bland interviews. Journalists in the United States are very cozy with power, very close to those in power. They laugh with them. They go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner with them. They have lunch together. They marry each other. They're way too close to each other. I think as journalists, we have to keep our distance from power." Amen, brother. Amen. That's exactly what I saw when I was in Washington, the incestuous relationship between the media and government. He goes on to say, I'm not seeing tough questions asked on American television. I'm not seeing those correspondents that would question those in power. It's like a club. We are not asking the tough questions. Matt Drudge, who publishes the Drudge Report, maybe the biggest news website in terms of popularity in the world, has now referred to Jorge Ramos as the last honest journalist in America. Now, I want you to think about this. He's not on CBS. He's not on ABC. He's not on NBC. He's not on Fox. He's not on MSNBC. He's not on CNN. He works at Univision in Miami on a Spanish language broadcast. He has more cojones. He has more integrity. He has more political independence than all of those frauds and phonies and bootlickers put together. Here's just a taste of Jorge Ramos interviewing the dear leader. Roll it, Brittany.
What I confess I did not expect, and so I'm happy to take responsibility for being naive here, is that Republicans who had previously supported comprehensive immigration reform suddenly would walk away.
A promise is a promise, and with all due respect, but you didn't keep that promise.
Well, here's what I would say, Jorge, is that, and we've had this conversation before, there's the thinking that the president is somebody who is all-powerful and can get everything done.
Yeah.
We have to have cooperation from all these sources in order to get something done.
Look, forget amnesty, because I don't agree with Jorge, but my point is this. Say what you want. At least he stands up to, I disagree with him on the issue, but at least he stands up to the dear leader. For example, unlike that fraud Bill O'Reilly, who pretends to be asking tough questions, he never lays a glove on the president. At least this guy, frankly, has the cojones. How come nobody on our side has the cojones to stand up and ask these guys the tough questions? And notice, even in that answer, notice with the dear leader, we're always having a conversation. That's what Brittany was saying in my headphones. She's completely right. She goes, notice with him, it's always we're always having a conversation about something. Now, just to give you a taste, okay? When you keep hiring Democratic hacks and passing them off as journalists, Chris Matthews, Democratic hack. Rachel Madcow, Democratic hack. Al Sharpton, Democratic hack. Okay? Ed Schultz, Democratic hack. I can run down the whole list. They're Democrats masquerading as journalists. You get activism. You get propaganda. You get journalists in the tank. On the 5, on Fox News, Kimberly Guilfoyle made the comment, this was yesterday, that said, honestly, I heard Obama's speech. It was weak. It was defensive. It was rambling. It wasn't really coherent. Honestly, I don't really see a coherent foreign policy. It's like the old Soviet Union. You criticize the dear leader? You're a traitor. Listen to Bob Beckel, another Democratic hack, go absolutely berserk because somebody in the media dared criticize the dear leader's speech yesterday to the cadets at West Point. Look at Beckel explode when Kimberly Guilfoyle dares to even level a mild criticism against the dear leader.
In the speech, he talked about the winning the war on terror.
Well, this is the problem. I just don't think that he understands. Honestly, I really don't think he has a grasp on what it means to have a cohesive, coherent foreign policy or how to combat the world on terror. We cannot go around to our enemies let me hug you, and then let me drone you. This won't hurt that much. This is my point.
That's treasonous, is what you just said.
No, it's actually accurate.
It is not accurate. The way you guys treat the President of the United States is abysmal and disgusting.
Oh, my gosh. We love
He is the commander-in-chief.
So you, Bob.
Well, what I'm saying is that he inherited a war in Iraq, which made Iran the power it is in the Middle East. It would made Al-Qaeda find a place to go. And Iraq has bred more trouble since that war.
Al-Qaeda is everywhere now, Bob.
Oh, I see. And why do you think they are? Why do you think they are?
Bush.
It's Bush's fault.
Bush.
I'm not saying it's Bush's fault.
That's what you just did.
No, I didn't. I didn't agree. I think from the beginning I said the war in Iraq.
Bob, you and I see eye to eye on a lot of things when it comes to war, whether we should get involved in Syria, we would agree. We both shouldn't. In Russia, we both agree. However, finishing the job we've started, there is a lot to be said.
It is of paramount
as long
importance.
as it takes to make sure Al-Qaeda doesn't creep back in and put them back to where they were before we spent.
All right, we don't need to hear the rest of this. Okay, in other words, it's treasonous now to criticize the President of the United States? What did you say that was treasonous? Treason is betraying your country. So now to say, if you listen to Kimberly Guilfoyle, what? He doesn't have a coherent foreign policy? It was a rambling defensive speech. Don't criticize the dear leader. No, don't criticize. Oh my God, that's an enemy of the state. Now you can't criticize the dear leader. That's why nobody believes the liberal media. 617-266-6868. Let me ask all of you this. Jorge Ramos now says that the media in this country, all of it, is too cozy with people in power. I agree. Do you agree, Boston? 617-266-6868. All of your calls next. Come back to the Kuhner Report, 826 here on the great WRKO. Mike, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Jeff.
Hey, Mike.
Oh, Jeff, I have absolutely no respect for that, whatever it is. Jorge. And I'm surprised with you. Here's a guy that's out and outright one-issue candidate. He wants to allow illegal immigration amnesty, the very subject that's going to destroy our country. And here's Jeff Kuhner saying he admires the guy, you respect him. I have no respect for the guy.
Well, Mike, no, obviously, I disagree with him strongly on amnesty, but, who else challenges Obama on Obamacare?
There's plenty of us. We don't need that guy down in Florida, advocating for the destruction of America. How can you respect the guy? Do you respect Matthews and the rest of them? He's no different, this guy, Jeff. Come on.
Well, Mike, I'll tell you what I do respect about him is that he's, I gotta say, on spending, on Obamacare, on the NSA, he hammered Obama.
But does he speak the language? He says on television, speaking a foreign language.
Oh, no, I agree with you. Look, I'm against Univision. I think that you should, if you're in America, you should speak English. My point is just this, Mike. You have a guy who's non-mainstream, right? Univision is a Spanish, whatever. It's a niche station. And he's the only guy left in the country who's actually willing to actually ask tough questions.
Yeah, he's pissed off because the guy won't go along with amnesty. That's the only reason he's saying these things. You can bet your life if he said, the president's for amnesty, he would keep his hands off him. He's a one-track destroyer of this country. I have no respect on. I think the guy's a bum, and he should be deported. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for that call, Mike. No, look, I disagree with him completely on amnesty. But my point is this. When he says, look, let me just repeat to you what he said. Did he not nail it? You turn on the TV and you see very bland interviews. Yes. Journalists in the United States are very cozy with power. Very close to those in power. Yes. They laugh with them. Yes. I've been to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I went almost every year. It's disgusting. It's incestuous. He goes, they go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner with them. Yes. They have lunch together. They marry each other. He was actually being polite. They just sleep with each other. Most don't get married. But let that go. And so he says, I think as journalists, we have to keep our distance from power. Now look, he's an amnesty guy. I'm not an amnesty guy. But the basic principle of journalism, we have to keep our distance from power. We're there to hold the powerful accountable. Now, he's got this one-trick pony hobby horse of amnesty. But we need a guy from Univision to be lecturing the entire press corps on what it means to be a journalist? That's my point. Kathy, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Welcome.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Kathy?
Good. Actually, I was calling to defend you because that's the first thing you said when you started telling the story is that you don't agree with what this gentleman believes in. It's just that you appreciate the fact that he's actually a journalist.
Yeah, exactly.
And my question is, I just wanted to throw it out. Do you ever see that this is going to change? Because it is. It's a little ridiculous that they don't cover everything. Like, they're not telling the truth about stuff. Do you see that, like, in the future that it's going to get better or worse?
Kathy, honestly, I think it's going to get much worse. And where I disagree with Jorge is I think the last true journalists are in talk radio. I'm not trying to pat my own back. Honestly, it's this show. It's Mark Levin. It's Michael Savage. It's Rush Limbaugh. We're the only ones now left willing to speak the truth and challenge the powers that be. We are actually the last journalists left willing to pursue the truth no matter where it leads. 617-266-6868, and that's why they want to destroy us. And the bloggers out there. The new media and talk radio are the last bastions of a free media in the United States. Janet, you're up next. Janet, hold on. I'll get to you right after this short break. Charlie, Rich, all the others, hang on. All of your calls. 8:30 here on the Great WRKO. Let's take it to a quick news break with Angela Anderson. 8:38 here on the Kuhner Report, AM 680 WRKO, 617-266-6868. The news anchor, very popular news anchor of Univision, who does a Spanish broadcast, Jorge Ramos, has given a wide-ranging interview to Politico. It's now going viral, where he alleges, I think correctly, that the media in this country, and in particular he's aiming at the establishment media, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, NPR, MSNBC, CNN, that they are essentially too cozy with power, too close to the Democratic regime, too close to politicians. It is like a club where he says they no longer ask the tough questions or keep their distance from power, that essentially we now have a government media complex. Agree? Disagree? 617-266-6868. You can also text to 680-680. This is from 508. Jeff, the press used to be, quote, the people's watchdog, unquote. Now they have become the fourth branch of government along with MSNBC and NPR. Bingo, 508. This is from another 508. Jeff, you are wrong. The media, they will become journalists again when we conservatives and Republicans are back in power. Then they will separate themselves and ask tough questions. You know what, 508? I got to tell you, it's true. When Reagan was in power, my God, were they chomping at the bit. This is from 617. I did not know this. Hey, Jeff, Univision is a larger network than ABC, NBC, CBS. Really? And they actually own one of those networks. Wow. I did not know that. I didn't know they were that big. This is from 781. It's pretty funny, actually. Jorge Ramos. He hammered Ted Cruz. He only cares about his cause, amnesty. Blank Ramos. 617-266-6868. Janet, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I've been saying for a while now that nothing will happen to Obama or the majority of Democrats, regardless of the scandals, regardless of how many laws they break, because they are protected by the media. I've started noticing recently, though, that the media is becoming dangerous to U.S. citizens, and that is because they have started voicing ideas that are outside of societal norms. They've been writing opinion pieces and articles about punishing and imprisoning the opposition, people who don't agree with immigration, global warming, people who support the Constitution. These are ideas that would never have been voiced in American society before.
Janet, I believe what's happening is a slow-motion revolution is taking place. And the hard left is now taking over. They are now slowly occupying the commanding heights of politics and culture. And that's why they fear us, the peasants. That's why they fear the Tea Party. That's why they fear Middle America. Because we are the only ones left standing in their way. I'm convinced of it. And you're completely right. There are now ideas being floated in the press, among columnists, among bloggers, where if you disagree with global warming, throw them in prison. You want to spy? Spy. You want to sick the IRS on your political opponents? Sick the IRS on your political opponents. Look, who are we kidding? We are slowly seeing a police state being erected in America. And this clown in the White House, he's our Hugo Chavez. Chavez destroyed Venezuela's democracy. He destroyed the middle class. He destroyed the economy. He's a wannabe dictator. Look, there was a story late last week. I couldn't get to it because we had the Justina Pelletier rally and so many other things. Obama, on the record, publicly said that he blamed, quote, gridlock in Washington on the, quote, structural design of the Constitution. In other words, our system of separation of powers and checks and balances is fundamentally flawed. And it's the reason why he, the dear leader, is frustrated. Because he can't get all of his socialist policies implemented. Are you kidding me? This is exactly what the Founding Fathers intended. Now, here's what I don't get. Suddenly now, gridlock is a problem. Suddenly now, having one branch of government controlled by the opposition, which is actually a good thing, because it's supposed to, you have checks and balances, you foster consensus. If you don't have majority support, bills can't get passed. That's what the Founding Fathers wanted, to protect the rights not only of the majority, but of the minority. Well, let me ask you this. How come George W. Bush was able to work with a Democratic Congress the last 3 years of his presidency? How come Bill Clinton, for 6 years, was able to work with a Republican Congress? How come Ronald Reagan was able to work for 8 years with Tip O'Neill and the Democrats dominating the House? How come Richard Nixon could deal with a Democratic Congress? How come Eisenhower could deal with a Democratic Congress? How come FDR could deal with a conservative coalition in Congress? So, going all the way back to our founding, all the way back to the beginning, between the Hamiltonians and the Jeffersonians, we've been able to deal with opposing points of view and opposing interests in Congress. But now, all of a sudden, in 2014, because the dear leader's in power, suddenly now, our Constitution is to blame. Suddenly now, the system of checks and balances and separation of powers, suddenly, no, that's a structural flaw. If any other president in history had said that before, God is my witness, he would have been impeached. He would have been run out of town. Instead, what do all the libs say? The dear leader. I love Obama. Hope, change. We are witnessing the cult of personality. And all of these lemmings and Obama bots are their brown shirts cheering on this new dictator who's trying to cement himself in Washington. 617, they love their Caesar. 617-266-6868. My friends, like we do every Thursday, we're now joined by Boston's talk radio legend, the one and only, the great Howie Carr. Coffee with Howie, brought to us by Perfect Smiles. Howie, how are you, my friend?
Very good, Jeff. Very good.
Howie, I gotta say, as usual, dynamite column in today's Boston Herald. So it looks like John Connolly, former associate of Whitey Bulger, murderer, prayed to John Paul II, and it looks like the saint came through for him, Howie.
I know. Is there no level to which these people will not stoop? You know, I didn't realize that prayers were required to keep this guy in the can, but I've stepped it up since I heard what the lawyer said yesterday. You know, I got a rosary now hanging from my rearview mirror, so I can pray as I'm driving along that this ruling is overturned. I mean, this is ridiculous. The guy is, I mean, this guy is just so guilty, so dirty, and the thought that he might get out even for a while is just unthinkable. I really hope that. If the Florida Attorney General decides not to appeal or loses the appeal, I hope they bring him back here to Boston. You know, they could try. There are at least 2 counties they could try him in for various murders that he allegedly set up for Whitey. You know, I mean, he should definitely be tried again if Florida can't keep him in the can.
Now, Howie, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, do you think he will eventually, God forbid, be brought back to Boston if he gets out of Florida?
Yeah, I think he definitely will. Like last year, they, Whitey Bulger was being tried last year, and the feds had an overwhelming case, but you never know what a jury's going to do. So, just in case, the jury had some ringer on it, which in fact they did have a ringer on it at the end. Some moonbat went crazy and decided that she was going to make a statement of some kind. I don't know. I think the statement was, "I'm a fool," but she almost screwed up the whole thing. But in case the jury had gone south and somehow acquitted Whitey, as unimaginable as it seems, Dan Connolly, the district attorney of Suffolk County, was standing by, and they were going to indict Whitey here. So they're ready to go. I think. I don't think Connolly would let this opportunity pass, because Zip was definitely the finger man for a double murder right down the street from the federal courthouse on Northern Avenue back in 1982, allegedly. And the ironic part is, which I mentioned in my column today, is that when Zip fingered this guy, this hood named Brian Halloran, for Whitey, he was taking a sabbatical from the FBI. And Jeff, as I said in my column today, try not to let this destroy your faith in the integrity of Harvard University, but Zip was a full-time student at Camelot High.
Really? When
he was working part-time for Whitey and identifying informants to be machine gunned.
How did he get in?
How did he get into Harvard?
Yeah.
They wrote him this guy, John Morris, another crooked Fed, that took thousands of dollars from Whitey. He had written him this glowing recommendation. Zip Connolly is the agent that we all aspire to be. I guess because Morris only got $7,000 from Whitey, and Zip had gotten hundreds of thousands. So when the trial came, the letters were all read into the record by the federal prosecutors, and then Brian Kelly, the federal prosecutor, said after realizing that Whitey that Zip Connolly had identified another hoodlum for execution, for gangland execution, did you reconsider and send Harvard a letter saying that perhaps on second thought Zip wasn't really Harvard material? But of course, you know what? I think he was Harvard material.
Howie,
he was a total dirtball.
Howie, I got to ask you this. Apparently, a lot of the family members and kin of the Bulger gang victims are absolutely outraged by the judge's ruling that Connolly could now potentially walk free on a technicality.
Yeah, they absolutely, and they should be. I mean, it's like you think this thing is over, and all of a sudden, it rears its ugly head, and you just get a slap in the face. Did you ever notice something, Jeff? That the only people who ever get breaks on technicalities are the actual perps. The victims never get a break on a technicality. It's like this thing now. They had a law that juvenile killers could get life without parole. What a myth that is. That's like the war on women or the Obama economic recovery. It's just life without parole. But so now they got people going up before the parole board today, juvenile killers. They're looking to get out. And Zip Connolly gets out. Because you know why the juvenile killers are getting out? Because the SJC decided to make the law saying that juvenile killers could get parole. They made it retroactive. How about the people the juvenile killers kill? Do they get some kind of retroactive second chance in life? No, of course they don't. No. But Zip Connolly and the juvenile killers, they always get a second chance, or a third, or a fourth, or a fifth chance. And I like the fact that they say, I was actually reading in the Globe today. I don't know why, the one blew by me as I was walking, and somebody in the Globe said that hasn't Connolly suffered enough? No, he has not suffered enough. He killed people. And he's not innocent. Even if he throw this conviction out, he still did 10 years for racketeering. Nobody ever overturned that conviction. The guy is a gangster.
Howie, before I let you go, buddy, are you doing any public events, any book signings that people need to be aware of?
I'm gonna be up in Maine, but not anything. Where am I going to be? Where am I going to be this weekend? I'm just asking somebody here. Where am I going to be? In Springfield? I'm going to be in Springfield. I'm going to be at the Cappies in Springfield on Saturday from 3 to 5. It's a wine tasting with my cousin Joseph Carr. It's not with my cousin. Maybe another one of my cousins will show up. Oh, buy a copy of Ratman and you get a copy of Rifleman for free. This is at Cappy's for Father's Day. It's a Father's Day special. So come on.
All right. So if you buy Ratman, you get Rifleman for free.
Correct.
Wow, Howie, that's a pretty good deal.
I know, Mike Dukakis many years ago outlawed 2-for-1s, happy hours, but happy hour is coming back for me, when it comes to my book.
Howie, is there a website people can go to get more information, my friend?
Yes, you can get more information on all of my appearances and my next night of crime, which is again in Springfield. Go to HowieCarrShow.com. HowieCarrShow.com.
We have been talking with Boston's talk radio legend, the one and only Howie Carr. Howie, buddy, have a great weekend, my friend.
I'll have a great weekend. Thank you, Jeff. Same to you.
Take care.
And then say a prayer.
617-266-6868. Rich, Charlie, everybody else, hang on. I'll get to all of your calls. Do you trust the media? And do you think Jorge Ramos is right? Has the media now become essentially a cozy club in the tank with the Democratic Party and the Obama regime? I say yes. What do you say, Boston? 617-266-6868. All of your calls next. Rich, you're up next on the Great WR. Oh, you want to hold off on Rich? Rich, you're up next. Go.
Jeff.
Hey, Rich.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Boston has 2 legends now.
Oh, thank you, Rich. Wow. Oh, wait, thank you. That's high praise indeed. Thank you.
Jeff, I just had 2 quick points. I need a minute. I just want to bring up last weekend at the rally how it spoke volumes. When you think about it was a holiday weekend, Memorial Day, and something like 35 million people were traveling. And when you saw the amount of people that showed up on a holiday weekend was just amazing. The voice that you're carrying throughout this state, I can't wait till it goes nationwide.
Oh, thank you, Rich. Honestly, I thank you for showing up. All of Kuhner country, it sent shockwaves throughout the entire political media establishment. I believe now we're on the verge of freeing Justina. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Jeff, 2 quick things.
Sure.
On the amnesty, I know you're on different subjects right now.
Yes.
When are the Republicans going to stand up and absolutely say, don't even bring up amnesty until the vets are taken care of? Forget about amnesty. Take care of the VA first. And the second point I want to make about Verizon, and it ties into the conversation about Ramos and the Boston Public Library. Verizon does not offer Fox News on its basic subscription. So when people go into commercial buildings, especially Logan Airport, and you always see CNN on
that's
TV.
Why I always see CNN.
Exactly.
I didn't know that.
It's an upgrade. It's the second upgrade. And that's why they don't even carry the Blaze but they carry Al Jazeera now on the second subscription.
Well, I mean, I'm sure, of course, Al Jazeera would want amnesty. That would be a great victory for radical Islam to break the back of this country. Charlie, you're up next. Go.
Good morning.
Hey, Charlie.
All right. Reason I'm calling is I enjoy your show. I respect you and I follow behind you. And I have a problem when you call O'Reilly a phony, a fraud, I think is what you termed him, in that interview. And I watched that interview on the Super Bowl, and, you know, he pressed him. He says, this was your own words. You're going to fundamentally change this country. What do you mean by that? And he went after him on Panetta. Did he tell you? He pursued and went after these questions. What can you do? You can't hit the guy over the head with a hammer to make him answer him. And, you know, you're on a page, like this guy, the one you just quoted today that's for the Spanish station. You said you got to give him kudos because he's telling the truth. Well, you know, O'Reilly, he's had over, I think, close to $8 to $10 million donated to the veterans with those wheelchair things. That's his campaign totally. So he's a good person that's moving the country in the right direction, as you are. So we need to get together as a unified force, not divided, Jeff. That's the problem I have. Because we're divided, we fall.
Charlie, look, I hear what you're saying. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of Bill O'Reilly. He's taken a lot of pot shots at Rush Limbaugh. He's attacked Sean Hannity. He's attacked Mark Levin. He's attacked Michael Savage. He's gone after conservatives mercilessly over the last 4, 5, 6 years.
I've heard him defend Limbaugh before.
Sometimes, but I'll tell you this. I mean, when he had his own radio show and he was trying to knock Rush Limbaugh off, he said some things that were utterly vile. And he's been going after the supposed right wing, those are his terms, not mine, for years. Because he's trying to position himself as a centrist and a moderate and an independent. And I got to tell you the truth, honestly, Charlie. Now, we can agree to disagree. I saw that interview with Barack Obama. My wife saw that interview with Barack Obama. He didn't lay a glove on Barack Obama.
Well, he called him to the ground about Susan Rice. You sent her out to say this stuff. I mean,
but he didn't do any hard-hitting follow-ups. Look, O'Reilly's shtick is this, and Dick Morris even said it, even when he was interviewed by O'Reilly. Dick Morris said, look, Bill, I'll be honest with you. Your reputation in Washington is your bark is a hell of a lot bigger than your bite. And I think that he pretty much nailed it.
I don't know.
I'm not saying the guy's the devil. I'm not saying he's the enemy. I'm not saying he's worse than other journalists on television. I'm just being honest with you. I saw the interview that Jorge Ramos did with Obama on Obamacare, for example. He was much tougher. I disagree with him on amnesty, but he was much tougher on Obamacare with the dear leader than O'Reilly ever has been with the dear leader.
He got Jessica's law passed in many states. He got a professor thrown out in Florida that was getting money from jihadist organizations. So, and he's done a lot of good things. So, you know, hey, maybe he's made mistakes. I don't know. I don't have to worship the ground, but he's he's moving the country in the same direction. We have to stop the bitter infighting. We have to go forward. If he's doing it, he has to stop it too. But we're all got to move the country in one direction, Jeff. That's my position. Otherwise, we're never going to do it.
Charlie, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. 617-266-6868. Coming up next, new stunning revelations on the VA scandal, and Ed Snowden breaks his silence, gives an interview to NBC News, and guess what? Jean-Francois is not happy. All of those stories, 9:03 on the great WRKO. Don't touch that dial.
News at the top and bottom, talk in between. We shout it and we proclaim it, and this causes people to lose their minds. This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.
Here on the great WRKO, and now on 93.7 HD2, hour 4 of the Kuhner Report. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull in full bulldozing mode today. 617-266-6868. You can also text us 680-680. So, before I get to the VA story, Ed Snowden, as you know, the former NSA contractor, who I think is the story so far of the 21st century. I think there's no getting around it. People are still talking about whether he's a patriot or a traitor. To me, he's clearly a patriot who was working for the NSA and to his shock and horror realized that our government, what they call the metadata collection efforts that they had, were collecting our phone records, were listening on Americans' phone calls, looking at their internets, reading their texts, going through their social media. In other words, we have erected a national security state, a national surveillance state whereby our government is spying on countless American individuals, arbitrarily, willy-nilly. And so, when he found out about this, he put the good of his country above his personal self-interest. He was then living in Hawaii, had a very comfortable job, very comfortable home, had a girlfriend, was basically living the high life, and he threw it all away to leak this to the American public so we would know that our own government, despite the lies of the Bush administration, despite the lies of the Obama regime, were in fact spying on Americans. We had our own Stasi. Under the guise of the war on terror, in the wake of September 11, 2001, the ruling class erected a police state. And so Ed Snowden did what any patriot, what to me any decent American would have done. He blew the whistle. And the moment he blew the whistle, he became public enemy number one in the eyes of the Obama regime, because now their tactics, their thuggishness, their desire for tyrannical control and power was now exposed. And the march towards a socialist dictatorship, to an authoritarian socialist regime, and the mass violation of civil liberties was revealed for not only the American people, but the whole world to see. But to speak the truth in America, to expose the truth in America, is now verboten. It is now forbidden. And so the liberal left media, the government media complex, led by the New York Times, began a witch hunt against Ed Snowden. And so finally Ed Snowden, in Russia, where he's been granted temporary asylum by Vlad the Great, Vladimir Putin. I mean, if you're going to have a socialist police state, do it right, go to Russia. Because there, say what you want, they know how to do it perfectly to a T. And he finally broke his silence to the American media and gave an exclusive interview with Brian Williams. And the regime is now basically trying to destroy his credibility by saying, he was just a low-level analyst. What did he know? What access did he have? He didn't have all these supposedly incriminating documents. He's nothing. He's nobody. Why is everybody paying attention to this guy? He's a low-level analyst. He's a nothing. He's a schmuck. And Ed Snowden sets the record straight, saying, no. I also worked for the CIA. I also worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency. I did a lot of work, and believe me, your government is even more secretive, more manipulative, more deceptive than you can possibly imagine. Roll it, Brittany.
Well, it's no secret that the U.S. tends to get more and better intelligence out of computers nowadays than they do out of people. I was trained as a spy in sort of the traditional sense of the word, in that I lived and worked undercover overseas, pretending to work in a job that I'm not, and even being assigned a name that was not mine. But I am a technical specialist. I am a technical expert. I don't work with people. I don't recruit agents. What I do is I put systems to work for the United States. And I've done that at all levels, from the bottom on the ground all the way to the top. Now, the government might deny these things. They might frame it in certain ways and say, oh, well, he's a low-level analyst. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to use one position that I've had in a career here or there to distract from the totality of my experience, which is that I've worked for the Central Intelligence Agency, undercover, overseas. I've worked for the National Security Agency, undercover, overseas. And I've worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency as a lecturer at the Joint Counterintelligence Training Academy, where I developed sources and methods for keeping our information and people secure in the most hostile and dangerous environments around the world. So when they say I'm a low-level systems administrator, that I don't know what I'm talking about, I'd say it's somewhat misleading.
I mean, how childish. No, really. How childish Jean-Francois, the dear leader, all of these libs now, and I have to say these national security Republicans, the McManiacs, the John McCains, suddenly now, because they can't refute his damning revelations, now they're almost like children. He wasn't really that important. He's a low-level guy. Nothing there. He's nothing. He's nothing. He's a little speck. He's nothing. Well, if that's the case, why is he the most wanted man in the world? If that's the case, how come these revelations have literally shaken the foundations not only of this country, but of our alliances with Europe, with our partners all over the world? Because it turned out we're not only spying on fellow Americans, obviously to blackmail many of them or intimidate them or gather dangerous or incriminating information, we were spying on Angela Merkel's personal cell phone. The Germans are livid. We were spying on the entire French government. The French are livid. We were spying on the British ruling class, the political class. They're livid. This has fractured our alliances all over the world. And what I find incredible, to me, this is mind-boggling. Now, I want you to stand back and just stand back objectively. Because at one time in this country, the one thing the left was very good at was the issue of civil liberties. The ACLU makes its money off of civil liberties. Now, I'm not talking about putting a cross on some football field. I'm talking about, I want you to think about this, okay? Our government created a shadow government, which it did not disclose or tell the American people. We're literally behind closed doors in the corridors of power, unbeknownst to all of us. They created an elaborate bureaucracy and national security apparatus whereby every call made, every time you go on the internet, every phone record, every time you go on social media, there are thousands of NSA analysts listening, watching, spying, gathering information. This is the Stasi. I don't know how many amendments this thing violates. The freedom of speech, freedom of expression, privacy, the First Amendment, against unreasonable searches and seizures, the Fourth Amendment, on and on and on. This is the stuff of Hugo Chavez. This is the stuff of Nazi Germany. This is the stuff of East Germany. This is the stuff of the KGB. And then reports have been coming out that NSA analysts were so sick and depraved, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. They're listening in on pillow talk. Soldiers in Iraq calling their wives and girlfriends, they're listening. Prominent people on the phone, they're listening. What you're doing on Facebook, they're watching. What sites you visit, they're watching. How the NSA program has not been completely dismantled, I mean root and branch, is absolutely beyond me. Instead, you see the libs one after another and those phony neoconservatives The dear leader, the terrorism. So under the boogeyman now of supposedly a terrorist under every corner, we have to spy on all Americans? All Americans now are presumed guilty until proven innocent? We have to throw away our constitutional rights? Because our ruling class tells us so? You want to know who deserves the Nobel Peace Prize? Ed Snowden. You want to know who deserves the Medal of Freedom? Ed Snowden. You want to know who to me is one of the greatest heroes and patriots of our time? Ed Snowden. To me, he's the Thomas Paine of our time, warning against our own tyrannical government. Instead, did you see Jean-Francois, a.k.a. Pepe Le Pew? John Kerry, I thought, was going to get himself a heart attack. So then he comes out and insults Snowden and says he's dumb. He calls him a coward and a traitor. And issues an order, a challenge, taunting him, saying, man up, come to the United States and face trial. Why? So this poor guy can face a kangaroo court and have his entire life destroyed? So they can exact retribution? Because mark my words, Ed Snowden did tremendous damage and utterly humiliated the dear leader, Hillary Clinton, and all of these phony liberals that claim to support civil liberties, but in fact are willing to take them away at the drop of a hat whenever it suits them, because ultimately they're about power and about control. So here is Jean-Francois basically getting a conniption on the Today Show. Roll it.
What he's done is hurt his country. What he's done is expose for terrorists a lot of mechanisms which now affect operational security of those terrorists and make it harder for the United States to break up plots, harder to protect our nation. Edward Snowden is a coward, he is a traitor, and he has betrayed his country, and if he wants to come home tomorrow to face the music, he can do so.
You little phony, you. Who's the one that lied about his country in Vietnam? Who's the one that gave aid and comfort to the Viet Cong? Who's the one that broke his oath repeatedly? No, Jean-Francois, you're the coward and you're the traitor. Just ask the Vietnamese. 617-266-6868 is the number. Is Ed Snowden a coward and a traitor? Jean-Francois says yes. I say no. What do you say, Boston? 617-266-6868. All of your calls next. 924 here on the great WRKO, 617-266-6868. Jean-Francois, a.k.a. Pepe Le Pew was, honestly, I thought his face was gonna burst yesterday on the Today Show. He was so upset with Ed Snowden giving that interview to NBC News. Called him a traitor, called him a coward. I honestly thought that Pepe, the Botox was just gonna pour out of his face. Pepe, easy. Pepe, don't get so upset, Pepe. Pepe, take it easy. I don't want that Botox to just pop. You can text us at 680-680. This is from 781. Jeff, what about Obama blowing that CIA operative's cover in Afghanistan on Monday, and John Kerry is running his mouth over Snowden? The traitor John Kerry is a loser and a coward. Amen, 781. This is from 508. Jeff, I would like John Kerry to, quote, man up, unquote, and set the record straight for all of his Vietnam brothers he threw under the bus. Amen again, 508. This is from 339. Hey, Jeff, if you want to stop the government from listening, start every conversation off with an Our Father. You know what, 339? I may start doing that now whenever I talk to people on the phone. Oh, I can't listen to this. Oh, separation of church and state. Oh, no. Oh. Russ, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Go. Hello, Russ.
You know, really, Kerry, he's really a beaut. You know, I call him Turncoat Kerry. He's a recipient of the Ho Chi Minh Medal of Honor, and he wants to call Snowden a traitor? You got to be kidding me.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Russ? Sorry?
Yeah, he's a recipient of the Ho Chi Minh Medal of Honor, you know. He sits in the Hall of Fame over there, you know.
No, I know. No, I know. The North Vietnamese communists love this guy. He threw our troops under the bus with one of the most despicable lies ever leveled, saying that we were a nation of war criminals. Not since the time of Genghis Khan did occupiers and conquerors go into another country, burn down villages, rape women, murder children. And now he's calling Ed Snowden a traitor and a coward? When this guy fled after 4 weeks in Vietnam to stab his fellow brothers in arms in the back? Are you kidding me? 617-266-6868. Eric, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Eric?
Not too bad, sir. Ed Snowden, he really is a traitor. And the reason is that he didn't just give away all of those, the secrets of the NSA thing. And let me say right up front, I was against it from day one, and I caught all kinds of crap from conservatives way back then about, how I was a terrorist lover for not supporting the Patriot Act and all that stuff. But
hold on, but now Ed Snowden is a traitor now.
Yeah, he's a traitor because
he humiliated their leader.
No, he didn't just release that. He released a lot of other information. And the difference between him and Kerry is that maybe, agree with him or not, he didn't run off to Russia and China like Snowden did. If you're going to sit there and do a whistleblower thing, you don't sit there and run off to people who can be potential, enemies in this situation with all that sensitive information. He ran right to China and he ran right to Russia. And he says, oh, well, I'm a patriot and all this. A real patriot would have stayed and he would have defended himself in this situation to be able to, to stand up and explain why what he did was the right thing to do. But the situation is, he didn't just give away.
Eric, honestly, It's incredible. You are literally mouthing the Democratic talking points. So let me go through them one by one. No, really, it's incredible. And you even preface it by saying you were against the Patriot Act, you were against all of this spying, and then the guy reveals all of this spying, and nobody, and don't claim you did, because nobody knew the depths of this. Everybody's shocked and horrified. And now, all of a sudden, you want to throw this guy in a dungeon? So let me deal with it one by one. Hold on, one by one. Which terrorist operations has Ed Snowden compromised? Name me one terrorist that we haven't captured because of Ed Snowden, one terrorist operation, besides the word of Jean-Francois with no proof. Show me one.
You're asking me to basically try to prove a negative here because we don't know what we've lost.
So if you don't know, how could you make these allegations?
How can you make the allegations the other way that they didn't?
Because there's no proof.
There's no proof. Because the thing is,
hold on. I can give you proof. Al-Qaeda attacked our embassy in Benghazi. And this president and this Secretary of State and his entire regime lied. So, no, I'm just being honest with you. So when terrorists have attacked us, this president lies. So now you're telling me that this guy who's lied about everything, suddenly now I'm to take his word without no evidence whatsoever? That terrorist operations weren't compromised? Number one. Number two, hold on. Number two. What gives the government the right to listen in on your phone calls or my phone calls? What gives them the right? Who are they to listen to us? Why are you so willing to support a police state just because Obama's in power?
I'm not agreeing with it. I didn't agree with it back then. I don't agree with it now.
So what's the problem? To you, Snowden should be a hero then.
No, because what Snowden did is he wasn't just gave away the information on the NSA spying. He gave away a lot more information.
Like what?
And he dumped a whole bunch of stuff, Jeff.
Like what?
You know he did.
What do you mean I know I did? You tell me what. Give me specifically what.
He just did. So he just gave away the information on just the spying. Is that what he did?
What he revealed was that our government, through a metadata collection, was collecting the phone calls and all of the internet messages of the American people as well as foreign leaders. And it's been tremendously humiliating and embarrassing to the regime. So this man exposes basically a police state in America. And you want to throw him in the dungeon?
Jeff, what I'm saying is that even though I disagree with the program in that situation, the man was in a situation where he had a clearance to be able to keep these secrets. He didn't do that. He ran off. He exposed them all and compromised our people overseas as well.
Who did he compromise?
Who did he compromise? Jeff, come on.
Don't come on. That's not an argument. Who? Give me one.
Ridiculous. You don't think that you don't think that all he had was just that information? He had a ton of information.
Who did he compromise?
Who did he compromise? Oh.
Okay, so you don't know. So you want to destroy this man because you don't know. Because he humiliated Obama. Hold on, Eric. Eric, hold on. Some of the callers want to respond to you. Here's Comrade John. Comrade, you're on with Eric on the Kuhner Report.
Eric, whether you like, you're right. Snowden is a traitor. But he's a traitor to a communist, corrupt government. He's a freedom fighter for the people. Period.
Did he come back and actually stand up to the music and defend what he did?
Why?
Instead of staying home and running over to Russia.
Why? What do you mean? Well, first of all, he didn't want to go to Russia. He wanted to go to Latin America.
No,
it was the State Department that revoked his passport. But no, the point is this. No. Why should this guy spend the rest of his life in prison for exposing and revealing the truth? See, here's your problem.
When you want to do something that's
No. Brittany, no. Tone it down. Wait. Let's end it right now. Hold it. Here. Why isn't Obama in prison? Why isn't Kerry in prison? Why aren't Hillary Clinton in prison for erecting a police state? Why aren't you going after the tyrants instead of the dissident? Thank you. And 617-266-6868. My friends, liberalism in a nutshell. Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, 940 here on the great WRKO. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let me quote something to all of you from Thomas Paine, who once famously remarked that it is the duty of every patriot to protect his country from his government. Here is what Thomas Paine once said about government. Government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. And that's what we have here. We now have a growing, intolerable, oppressive government that, because of Ed Snowden, has been exposed as a creeping police state that is spying upon Americans, violating our privacy, violating our civil liberties. Now, let me just say this. When Thomas Paine and the great patriots rose up against British rule, they were violating the law. By today's standards, they're criminals. When Martin Luther King marched in Selma, Alabama, when he led the civil rights movement against Jim Crow and segregation, he was breaking the law. So this argument now that all of a sudden, all of these born-again liberals now believe in law and order. Now all of a sudden, he must come home and face trial. He must come home and we'll throw him to the dungeon. Because we're going to teach him a lesson. You expose the secrets of this ruling regime. You expose what we're doing, violating your civil liberties. Creating essentially a dictatorship in America, a government behind the government. We're going to teach you a lesson. No, it's the exact opposite. They are the KKK of today. They are the redcoats of today. It's not Ed Snowden who should be facing prison. God is my witness. It is Obama. It is Jean-Francois. It is Madam Hillary. And everybody who erected this criminal police state, which violates our fundamental rights. My friends, they violated their oath. They violated the Constitution. They violated the very pillars of our democracy. Why is he in the firing line? Did you authorize this? I didn't authorize this. Did we give the government a blank check? Did we tell them, go ahead, listen on our phone calls? Read our texts? Read our emails? Follow us on Facebook? Follow us on social media? Spy on us? I never voted for that. Did you vote for that? And what's even more despicable is they lied. Bush lied. Cheney lied. The dear leader lied. Hillary Clinton lied. And then when Ed Snowden exposed them, what did the dear leader, that phony, that fraud, say? Oh, let's now have a discussion. We need to have a discussion on the balance between security and civil liberties. If it wasn't for Ed Snowden, there would be no discussion, you phony, you. No, what to me is incredible. And this is how perverse our times have become. The hero, the patriot, the dissident, he's the one that's vilified, not the communist criminals running our country into the ground. 617-266-6868. Linda, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for your service to this country. My first statement is about this fellow Snowden. He grew up in the area. He was a high school dropout, but yet he had a site over in Japan, I believe, in connection with his NSA work. Does any of this remind you of another person in American history? Oswald, the loser, but yet he could speak Russian fluently? And that's kind of scary if that is a similar setup for the American people. And also, last week I spoke to the very nice man, Michael, who took over your show. And one of the things I brought up is Trey Gowdy had made the statement, did Obama seek help from any of our allies in the region? And remember, he would be seeking help as a rescue, not as a military. So I think that's sort of interesting to think of that point.
Thank you very much for that call, Linda. I appreciate it. Annie, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on WRKO. Go ahead, Annie.
Hi, thanks, Jeff. I think John Kerry has lost his way, and I'm thinking back to approximately 1970-71 when the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, which he was a leader, camped in Concord, Massachusetts quite peacefully, then went on to Lexington where they were arrested and not allowed to camp. And they were kept in the town barns overnight. The judge opened up the courthouse on a Sunday morning. I know because I was there. I was a teenager at the time, and I watched the bus pull up with the dissidents who had been arrested, watching them carry disabled Vietnam veterans up the steps of the Concord courthouse, which is in the old town hall. They had no elevators, and it was quite a moving scene, but he was standing for something back then. What happened to him? He lost his way. He himself was a protester against the actions in Vietnam, and I'm just thoroughly disappointed in what has happened to him now.
What happened, Annie, I think, is this, and I saw it in D.C., and I'll be honest with you, okay? I'll be very candid. It was on the right and on the left. When you get close to power, you become corrupted by it. You become a shill for it. You rationalize it. You excuse it because it infects you like a cancer. And now he thinks he's God. He's jet-setting all over the world. And what does he have at his feet? An empire. The American military, the national security apparatus. He can basically kill anybody at the drop of a hat. And now Ed Snowden reveals that they're playing God with our lives? No, 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 no. Now Jean-Francois must destroy the hero. He must destroy the patriot. But I'll tell you this, and this is the hypocrite that Jean-Francois and all of these liberals are, if they know it. Deep down, they know it. Had Ed Snowden come out during Bush, and had he exposed the NSA during Bush, they'd be building, forget Maya Angelou, they'd be building statues to this guy today. Hold on, my friends. I think we've got Jean-Francois on the line. Secretary of State John Kerry, Pepe. How are you, Pepe?
Hello, Mr. Kuhner. How are you this morning?
Not too bad, Pepe. How are you?
I'm doing very well, very well. Just get back from the Middle East and was where Teresa was, she informed me of the conversation this morning. And I would like to say, first of all, I'd like to say, did you know that I am a war hero? Are you aware of that?
I am, Pepe, yes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Secondly, Mr. Snowden, he's a disgrace. I feel as though he's a disgrace to this country. I don't know how anybody could throw somebody under the bus such as he has. Do you know that I am a war hero? Are you aware of that?
Yes, and you served in Vietnam, Pepe.
Yes, I single-handedly stopped that war. I am in the process now of stopping war in the Middle East and other places around the world. But besides the fact that I am a war hero, Mr. Snowden, he's a ballless dude. He needs to come back to the United States to face the retribution and the wrath of this administration.
Pepe, before I let you go, who pays for your Botox injections? Does that come out of your pocket? Is it covered under your health care? Or is it under Obamacare? Or does Teresa pick up the tab?
That's a good question. It comes out of the Veterans Funds, the VA, because I am a war hero.
Pepe, thank you for taking your busy time out of your busy schedule, and I want to thank you and salute you for your service, Pepe. 617-266-6868. You see, Jean-Francois decided to give us a call. 950 on the great WRKO. Ed Snowden, traitor or hero? I want to hear from you, Boston. 617-266-6868. All of your calls next. 9:56 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. My friends, obviously I won't have time to get to the VA story. I promise I'll get to it tomorrow. One other quick revelation from Ed Snowden. And we're going to discuss this in greater detail because, in fact, we had some tech guys talk to Brittany, Cooksey, and myself about the unbelievable surveillance technology at the hands of the government and NSA. You will not believe how they can spy on you now. And we're going to get into it tomorrow. But let me just tease, because Ed Snowden is completely right. Here is what he said again yesterday. He said that all of our phones, especially the iPhones, can be used as microphones or cameras if the NSA wants to spy on you. He also said when we draft emails, the government can learn our thought patterns. They can be listening on watching our emails, reading our emails, find out what we're thinking. It is absolutely chilling stuff. My friends, 1984, Orwell's dystopian novel, it's arrived. It should just have been called 2014. Steve, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Welcome.
Yeah, Jeff, just one quick point. To those guys earlier, I think it was John and who was the other one you had on, Michael? They were saying Snowden should come back because he's a coward.
Yes.
So they expect him to come back and face the government that sent 200 heavily armed federal troops to collect the bill. And also, didn't they put a guy who made a video in jail for a year, and it turned out it had nothing to do with anything?
Bingo, Steve.
That's who he has to face? I mean, really.
You nailed it. It's a kangaroo court. No, they want him to pay. You humiliated the dear leader. You exposed the totalitarian nature of liberalism. See, what Ed Snowden did was he showed that liberals, many of them, in their heart of hearts, they want a dictatorship. They want communism. And for that, like every other dissident, to the gulag for you. Frank, I got a minute. Go, my friend.
Thank you for taking my call. You're right, the journalists are in cahoots. I just got off the phone with the head of the Republican Party. Right now, there's some very bad anti-gun legislation working its way through the system. I haven't heard you say a word about it. I haven't heard you have any representative from GOAL, the Gun Owners Action League, on and speak about it. Can you explain why you support the Second Amendment and you haven't said a word about this? They want to take away the FID card, and then, according to the head of the Republican Party, they intend to confiscate people's guns?
Frank, honestly, we just have a lot of other stories. And in fact, we did talk about it. Maybe not to the extent you wanted, but we did. 617-266-6868 has been the number. I gotta go. See you all tomorrow. Remember, together we're beating liberals one day at a time.
News at the top Top and bottom talk in between.
Executing assigned host duties flawlessly because I can't do wrong.
This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.